We are here at Chosen People Ministries. I'm talking to Brian Crawford. Check this out. This guy earned his Master's of Divinity from the Charles Feinberg Center for Messianic Jewish Studies, 2015. Doctor of Ministry from Talbot School of Theology, 2021. He serves as the Director of Digital Evangelism at Chosen People Ministries. What a title, bro. That's awesome. And is the Associate Dean of the Charles Feinberg Center for Messianic Jewish Studies in Brooklyn, New York. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.
Are you having a good time here?
I'm loving it here in London.
Come on, that's awesome. Hey, right, I love this. I heard part of your talk that you did. You talk about how reading the Old Testament allegorically erases the Jewish people from God's plan, but reading the Old Testament literally results in standing with the Jewish people. Can you unpack that for us?
Sure. I mean, the entire Old Testament is about the literal descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You've got Israel all over the place. They're in a land. They've got a people. They've got descendants. They've got promises. They have cities like Jerusalem. They've got the Temple Mount. They've got everything there. And these are all very tangible, physical descriptions of real historical people, places, and things. And when you read those passages, historically, it seems to be saying that this is talking about a particular people group. But then when you go to passages in the same Old Testament that are prophecies about that same historical people group, many Christians have been taught to read those as allegories or having spiritual meanings, and they take it away from the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in Jerusalem, and then they bring in all these other meanings. And when you do that, only to the prophecies, and you leave all the historical ones intact, but you take the prophecies and you turn that into some kind of fulfillment in the church age or for Christians, then you're basically erasing the Jewish people from God's plan in the future. And so when you actually read the historical passages, like with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and David, and all of them, in the same way as you read the prophecies, then all of a sudden, the Jewish people are center in God's plan.
It's awesome. It's really, really great. And I can understand as a songwriter, I write songs, that you like to write poetry and you make it beautiful and allegorical and all that. But eventually, few generations down the line, people go, oh, it was all just made up. It was fantasy. It was Harry Potter or whatever. So for you, how do you kind of differentiate between good allegory, bad use of allegory?
Sure. So there's figures of speech all throughout Scripture. So there's cultural idioms and figures of speech, and there are legitimate allegories in Scripture. There are parables. We see that obviously with Jesus in the New Testament. So there are a lot of times when Scripture intends us to read it as some kind of parable allegory that has a hidden meaning that is kind of behind the text. But Scripture always tells us when it's doing that. It makes it very clear that this is a metaphor, this is an allegory, and there's hints in the text, and a close reader of the text will know when to look for those metaphors. The problem with allegorization, like taking allegory as if it's just default all throughout the prophecies in the Old Testament, it doesn't look for any of those hints. It just assumes that every single time it talks about Israel, it refers to the church. Every single time it talks about Jerusalem, it talks about the church. Every time that it talks about anything particular to the land of Israel, it just is talking about some kind of spiritual reality in the church as a blanket statement. And that is a really big problem because the Bible never teaches us to do that.
Yeah, no, it's so true. One of the most common ones that I've come across is when people say, oh, he calls us the apple of his eye. I'm like, does he call you that, or does he call his Jewish people that?
Exactly.
And we're adopted in, and there's a whole new covenant about that, you know. Are there certain things like that you just hear over and over and over that you're hoping to, you know, kind of combat that misconception?
Sure. I mean, there are so many promises to the Jewish people that perhaps have some kind of application to Gentiles in the church, but they're not directly related. So you got Jeremiah 29:11, where God is promising to the Jewish exiles who are in Babylon that I have a great plan and a purpose for you. And yet that's oftentimes taken to refer to me and as a Gentile Christian in the 21st century. Not exactly. Maybe you can say, well, the same God who said that to the Jews in Babylon has promised in the new covenant to do similar things for me. But that's still a jump away from what did Jeremiah actually intend to mean to his original audience in his original context.
So one of the things that we talk about a lot at God TV is this idea that we're excited about souls, Israel, and revival. Do you see any kind of a revival coming to Israel on the landscape, on the horizon?
We're actually in the middle of a revival in Israel right now. I mean, the internet in just the past 10 years has been a primary source for younger Israelis to encounter Yeshua, Jesus. And the congregations in Israel are actually bursting at the seams with these younger believers. And it's really exciting. They're encountering Jesus online as teenagers or as soldiers in the IDF or post their service. And then they're flooding our congregations. And we're actually having a discipleship problem, not as much an evangelistic problem, because they're coming into the congregations and now there's all these young believers and they need to be built up and discipled in the faith. So part of what Chosen People Ministries is doing in the land is investing in these new believers and training them and discipling them and giving them places where they can grow in their walk.
Well, we're so thankful for what you're doing. You're right on the front lines, like you said, in the digital world and everything. Brian, thank you for your time. God bless you. God bless Chosen People Ministries.
Thank you so much.